right, we will call to order the Plan Commission study session agenda. Margaret, if I can get roll call again.
Mr. Burleson,
Yes. Sorry, here. Sorry.
Ms. Cardona,
I'm here.
Mr. Gill,
Here.
Mr. Gillette,
Present.
Ms. Little is absent, Ms. Wooland,
Here.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Eberly,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Attorney Decker,
Here.
Mr. Panzik.
Here.
All right, thank you, everyone. Tonight on the agenda, we have some new and old business. The first one is Dale Letting is a petitioner. He will be coming in to seek a one-lot subdivision approval at 10801 Schneider Place. He's combining two lots into one. He's already received BZA approval, and the public hearing will take place on October 7th, 2020.
And you announced that at your last meeting, Mr. President. I did not expect Mr. Lenting to be here because of the simplicity of this one-lot subdivision, so this, I guess just a note that it will be on your agenda for October 7th.
Any correspondence regarding this as of yet?
No, and he has, I can tell you, he's already done everything he needs to do, properly notified everyone, sent the letters out, postings, the whole 9 yards. He's ready for his public hearing. And Ken actually has a letter that he'd provided a couple of weeks ago, because the review was pretty simple. He'll be asking, of course, it'll be a public hearing for primary plat, but he'll be asking for primary and secondary in the same meeting. Just you'll withhold signatures from the secondary plat for the 30-day statutory period if you approve it.
Which is normal for a residential lot like this.
For a one-lot subdivision, a small subdivision, yes, that's standard operating procedure.
Gotcha. All right. Any questions, comments from the board?
Just to refresh my memory, he came before the zoning board, right, already?
Yes, Nancy, he did. And there were a lot of neighbors there that had a very positive spin on this and everything. I think he lives on that block already. He lives in that neighborhood, yes, and you're right. There were neighbors there that spoke in favor of his variance request.
Right.
I mean,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that
Yep.
that was the same one.
That is him,
I mean, technically, he could put two houses on each of those lots.
right. Lots 12 and
Right.
13 that you see on the screen, he could put a house on each of those. He's choosing to combine those into one lot and put one house on the property.
Okay.
Right.
If no questions, other questions or comments from the board, we'll move on to the next item. B, the preserves, west, property discussion to rezone roughly 134 acres of land immediately west of the preserves on north of 101st Avenue. This was a deferred motion at our last meeting.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Jack Slager with Schilling Development, representing the Preserve. Thank you for taking the time again tonight at the study session to discuss this project further. We came in 2 weeks ago at the public hearing with a site plan for the Preserve West on 134 acres on the north side of 101st and west of the existing Preserve development. And we requested the same zoning that we have in the balance of the preserve as an RC1 PUD, which would allow us to have some smaller lots than the R1 zoning, but keep all the remaining R1 requirements. At that time, we had come in with a plan of 136 lots of varying widths between 80, 90, and 100-foot lots, and about 73 acres of green space, so about a 1.0 units per acre. We literally went back to the drawing board after the last meeting and revamped the plan slightly from what it was. We eliminated all the 80-foot lots and increased to only 90 and 100-foot wide lots, still all 150-foot deep. And the overall green space went from 73 acres to 70 acres, so still over 50% of the land remaining undeveloped. And so we now have 137 lots, all 90 and 100. And for Mr. Burleson, the count is, right now, the count is 60 90-foot lots and 77 100-foot lots. So just over half, basically the north half of the site from where we come across the bridge. The north half of the site is all 100-foot lots, and the south half of the site is all 90-foot lots. And again, that may flush out a little bit as we go to final engineering. This is still just a concept plan, but we're comfortable limiting ourselves to basically 90 and 100-foot lots, roughly half and half, something like that. So,
Jack, would you give me those numbers again, please? How many 90 footers and how many
60 90-footers
60 90 footers
and 77 100-footers.
Great, gotcha, thank you.
Jack, can you remind me where we were at last meeting? Because I know you had 2 estate lots.
Yes, so that was up in that northern section. We got rid of the estate lots.
Was here.
Was up in that northern section. Actually increased a little bit of green space there where the trees are behind those lots. And so those are now 100-foot lots.
There were 66 80 footers, 22 90 footers, and 46 100 footers, if I recall.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
6680,
66
22
80,
90s.
yeah, 22 90, and 46.
So your lot total went from,
136 to 137. We're
36 to
basically
130.
right there.
Yeah.
We're still, I mean, when you do the math
A
with
unit per
rounding,
acre.
you're still at 1.0 per acre.
Yeah.
We've also added into this plan just the potential for a bike path. We talked a little bit about it. It's the dash white line that you see on the drawing where it would tie in with the bike path system of Saddle Creek, follow along the creek, jump across at the bridge, at the new bridge, and then follow up along the creek and head up towards 93rd. So that's a corridor that we're kind of reserving for a future bike path. We also show a path around the west side of our 8-acre lake, where we're connecting, being able to actually have walking trail around at least along the west side of the lake there.
Jack, in the past plat, the lots actually went, how deep are the lots? Are they 150?
150, yeah.
In the previous one, there was not that green strip in between?
There was. The very last one we did, there was green space.
I'm sorry, between, just south of the cul-de-sac that goes to the
Yes.
west. Did those lots actually touch at that time?
No.
No? Okay.
The version prior to that, there was one that had that. So I attended 2 study sessions prior to that, and so we've been tweaking this plan as we've been going. But as it stands now, literally with this new plan, there is no lot back-to-back with another lot. No lot touches another lot on the back of the lot. So we're pretty happy with where this has come. Like I said, it still needs to go to engineering, but this is what we feel is a really good plan.
Has there been any further communication with the lady on, I can't remember her name, on 100 and, regarding their horse farm?
This property here, Jack.
To the west, there is not in the last 2 weeks. One other change that we did, and I don't know if you have the ability to zoom in on that very southwest corner, Rick.
Of this plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went
take a
ahead
look.
and put a cul-de-sac there. If we can kind of see. Yeah. So we put a little.
Right here.
It didn't draw out real well, but that's going to be at the very bottom, next to her horse barn. We put a cul-de-sac on that stub street. It allows basically for a turnaround there now, but we still would have the ability to extend that road, or somebody would, to extend that road further west, should that property ever become available for further development. But the road doesn't butt right into the side of her barn like it did before. where if you ever wanted to extend it, you would have to take that barn down. Now, it swings a little further north, and we've added a bubble on the end, so you have the ability to turn around. It's not just a dead-end street. And so that was one other change that we made. I will mention also, because it came up at a previous study session, the distance between the two entrances is now 250 feet. The minimum was 150.
125.
125. We originally had it over one more lot. It was a little bit closer, where there was only 2 lots on the west side of the entrance. Now there's 3, so we shifted it over a little bit further to get a full 250 in between the 2 entrances.
And right, this meets all the size requirements for our R1C PUD.
Well, no, but it's a PUD,
PUD.
yeah. It, in terms of an RC, a residential conservation planned unit development cannot exceed the density of its, what I'll call traditional counterpart, R1 or R2. And this is well below the R1 density of, standard R1 density of 1.4 units or lots per acre, so.
We went through the exercise of laying it out as a straight R1 development with R1 lots of 100 by 200. So we wanted to know, what would that look like? What is the count? Because we know we have 20 or 30 acres of floodplain. We've got the pipelines to deal with. And so we did a R1 layout on this site of 100 by 200 foot lots, and we came up with 159 lots. So, which is less than your average. I mean, I think it was still like a 1.3 per acre. But we were lower obviously because of the creek and the pipelines and everything. But if we wanted to try to maximize this site with our 100 by 200 foot lots, it would be about 159 lots.
And I think Jack's mentioned this before, they could have extended the lots, for example, this lake is twice the size that it needs to be, they believe, for detention purposes. That could be shrunk and the lots could be extended and to get the 200 feet, but this is a better plan than doing something like that. So frankly, I appreciate the creativity that's been shown here and the not extending these lots what I'll call artificially just to hit the 20,000 square feet.
And just to keep.
No, and I would agree too. This is a pretty good plan. I appreciate it, Jack, that you increased the lots to 90 feet or to 100 by quite a bit. So I appreciate that. Jack, I got a question for you. The dashed lines, is that the proposed bike path?
Yes.
Now on the south side of the entrance, Rick, if you could pull that drawing down so we can see.
Yeah, right here.
Was there talk about a bike path along there, along the, what is that, 100, is that 101st?
101st. There is a bike path directly across going into Saddle Creek, right where he's got his cursor.
Okay.
The talk was.
And that would.
Yep. And the talk that we had at the time was, rather than having us place our sidewalk along the north side of 101st, as is required by your ordinance, that we would instead install that sidewalk on the south side of 101st, which
Okay.
would then connect the Saddle Creek subdivisions and to the east, the Wellington subdivisions, the existing sidewalks. There's a gap right there.
Yeah.
So that'll connect the gap rather than having a piece of sidewalk on the north side that has no end or has no connection.
Okay, so it's just not shown on this drawing.
Correct. And that, again,
Okay.
some of that stuff will be back. We'll have to come back again for primary plat, and we'll get more into the details of the design. Right now, we're just trying to get through the favorable recommendation for the RC1 PUD zoning to be able to take it to the council, and then we can really dive into the engineering and all those details.
Jack, to remind us, any other variants from our subdivision control ordinance in this PUD?
Well, I think some of the cul-de-sacs are longer than the 400, but again, that's as shown on the plan and/or in the verbiage, in the text of the ordinance, those things would be identified. So if you're accepting this plan, you're accepting the fact that these cul-de-sacs are longer than 400 feet.
Other than that, on the lots themselves, we would follow, the house size, the setbacks. We use the floating building line that's mentioned in the R1 zoning as a 25 to 40.
What square footage of the facility?
The square footage of the houses would be at or above what's required in the R1.
Okay. Board, any other questions or comments from Jack or for Jack? If not, this will be on our regular scheduled meeting for a recommendation to the town council in October. Anything from the board before we move on to the next item?
I just have a quick question. The picture that you have up on our screen and the one that we got emailed to us, they're different. Yes, or? I'm looking at the one that was sent. Rick, you sent it.
Yes, because that went out a week ago, Nancy, that's correct. This drawing you sent me, Jack, was it
Maybe Monday?
Monday? Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
all right, because I was following along and what I was following on my email didn't match the screen. I just wanted to make sure it was a different.
Right.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Greystone Unit 3. This is another deferred action. This is rezoning of roughly 40 acres immediately south of Greystone Unit 2, Calumet Avenue. Thanks for coming back to another study session.
Yeah, again, Jack Slager with Schilling Development, representing CWS Holdings, the developers of the Greystone development. Again, thank you for allowing us to come back to another study session to further refine the plans for the Sigma property, 40 acres lying south of Greystone Unit 2 on the west side of Calumet Avenue. Again, currently zoned open space, and we are seeking to rezone it to an R3 PUD and a C1 zoning. This one, we have not taken the time to redraw it yet, but I guess I'm looking for some feedback tonight to see what direction we should head. We did lay it out as an R2 single-family development, so I wanted to show what that looks like, what that potential could be. I don't know if you have that one available, Rick.
Is that one you sent recently to Jack? Let me get into.
Probably Friday or Monday. So again, this one has the school property to the south, Calumet Avenue on the east, mostly unincorporated land to the west, although there is a sliver of land that is in the town of St. John that continues out to the state line. And we do want to provide a road stub out to the west for continuity and connectivity through the development.
Doesn't look like that's going to be the right one. Because the date's 9/1, you sent it after that. Let's take a look at this.
That's the original plan that we've still brought back tonight. And that's okay, if you want to leave that up, we can talk about it. I guess what we're asking for tonight at a study session level is some feedback. And I know, basically the only feedback I got at the last meeting was too much density, or it's too dense. I actually asked one of our builders to come to the meeting tonight. Ron McFarland is here from McFarland Homes. He is the builder of the paired villas or the duplexes out at Greystone. I thought I'd have him here to answer any questions we had about, or you had about the units themselves. When we take a look at a piece of property like this, a vacant piece of property comes to us, and we start to analyze what do we want to do with this piece of property. And our approach is to look at that piece of property and say, what is the highest and best use for that parcel of land? What's the highest and best thing that we can develop and reasonably sell on that piece of land? And in most cases, hopefully, it's a single-family development like we've come in with on the Casboni property, what we just recently looked at on Buckmeyer, the Continental project that we did last year. On this particular piece of land, we feel that this is the right product for this parcel, for this location in town. And I wanted to read something from your 2017 comprehensive plan. The 2017 Town of St. John Comprehensive Plan. This is the recommendations that were made by your consultant in the 2017 Comprehensive Plan. The following is recommended to help maintain the attractive residential neighborhoods that are the core of St. John while also preparing the town for future housing needs. Number one, continue to encourage the development of single-family residential developments that provide adequate transportation, connectivity, open spaces, trails, and amenities to attract long-term residents. And that applies very well to the preserve development. Number two, encourage a mix of housing types, including well-designed owner-occupied townhomes, senior housing, and duplex homes. Number three, require that all multifamily housing adhere to standards that ensure that new units adhere to good construction standards, high aesthetic quality, inclusion of owner-occupied units, and are appropriately located. Number four, maintain quiet residential streets with low traffic volumes. Number five, where possible, incorporate and build bicycle, pedestrian trails in residential developments to provide recreational opportunities. So that's the entire section of recommendations for residential development. And, you know, I thought it interesting that it speaks to having this type of development in certain places in town, not everywhere, but certain places. We're now starting to develop on the fringe of town, and we've found a good product that fits well. We want to continue building that in Greystone. I brought Ron to talk about if you have questions about who are the buyers that are buying these units, what is the reason that they're buying these units, and what does that look like, and why do we want to develop this product rather than another single-family development here? You know, we see the duplex buyer as a empty nester primarily and or singles, which means no or very few kids for the school system, less cars, less traffic. The empty nesters, some of them have one car, most of them maybe have two. The singles will have one car. So those are some of the benefits we see of the development, but I guess I'd like some feedback if the duplex product is completely off the table and you say you don't want it, you hate it, you don't ever want to see it in any form, then we'd just like to know that so we can go back to the drawing board and see what that needs to look like. But other than that, I'd like to hear, do you just want to see more space between them? Do you want to see a different type of unit? Just like to get some input from the panel.
Well, we appreciate that. Just speak for myself. I always get nervous when I start making decisions for developers. And you guys are supposed to be the ones that present us with a plan.
Yep.
And we take your plan as is and make a recommendation. So, but I understand what you're trying to accomplish today. So a couple of my questions are, my concerns have always been, as we move forward with rezoning to a particular type of zoning, is do we put ourselves in a predicament not a predicament, a situation where we have to continue that zoning on in that area, then flipping it from an R3 to a single-family R1. So how do you make that transition, or are we, if this is approved and you go farther west, are we then committing ourselves to that same type of zoning further down the
Yeah.
line? The other question I would have for you is, do you see more demand for cottage versus duplex, or is it duplex more? Do you see a bigger demand for duplexes versus cottage homes? So
Would you mind coming up and answering that? Because actually Ron builds both products, and he builds also in the gates, so I'd love to have him maybe address some of those things.
Yeah, and other sites that we've done, honestly, the demand is about equal. We do a large site in Cedar Lake right now where we have both types of product, and they run about 50/50. The $30,000 spread between product is really, a part of what drives the force here. That, every $5,000 or $10,000 becomes a different buyer. So, so that's a driver in it for sure. But from a demand standpoint, it's about equal.
okay.
And this particular portion of the site is relatively even. It's like 50/50, the amount of units of each.
Jack, do
And
you
that-
mind if I ask Ron? Ron, are your cottage homes typically the same square footage as the duplex, each duplex unit would be? So one cottage home, is it roughly equal in square footage to a half side of one side of a duplex?
I'm not sure I understand the question totally.
Well, your cottage home, let's say it's
As it's-
1,800 square feet.
Right.
Is your typical duplex roughly 1,800 square feet?
Yeah, the half a duplex or one side of the duplex, our smaller unit is 1,550 to 1,570, and the larger one is 1,750 to 18. Our cottage homes usually are 15 to 18.
Okay.
And we have some in other communities that are much larger. Some of the stuff we do at the gates, we've got some that are 2,200 feet on the
Right.
cottage home side. So, again, you're trying to hit multiple square footages for multiple
Right.
different buyer needs. The one that buys the 1,500 square foot typically is either a single gal with, maybe a nurse with no family, or the 80-year-old, who's totally by herself and is just trying to keep it down as reasonable as she can and be done with the maintenance at home. The biggest thing that drives that older widowed or widower buyer is the maintenance issue. They're just, they can't, they just don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, John has explained to me that that's essentially the difference is it's the buyer who wants the single family rather than to be attached to someone else, but they're getting basically the same product, I think is the way to
Yeah,
put
the
that,
same
John.
outcome, but then you don't have that common wall with your neighbor. You get the space between houses.
Yeah.
For the cottage home versus the duplex unit.
Yeah.
And the maintenance free is the key to both of them.
Yeah.
Just, having the snow and the lawn care. One other point that just popped into my head and left. It may come back to me.
Jack, you brought up density as a concern from this board. I mean, is that what we're looking at? No, I understand it's all conceptual, but is that the type of density you need in this type of development, or is there?
Well, obviously, we'd like to maximize the density, but we want to make it a comfortable site, and we need to make, it's more of a factor for them. The less units that are on the site, the higher the price goes to him for the land, and then he can't sell them if they're priced more than anything else, so.
This density is very similar to the phase just to the north.
Yes, it's actually gotten a little bit lower as the very first phase was the most dense. We had them really packed in there. When we got done with that one, we said, let's spread them out a little bit more. We went to phase 2, spread them out a little more, and now we've gone to this phase and have actually spread them out just a little bit more. So we have minimum 8-foot side yards on all of these units, which is the same as what the single family requires. So you have a minimum of 16 feet in between buildings. So that's how we've set it up.
I have a quick question. This is Yolanda.
Sure.
My concern with the cottage homes and the paired villas is one of the things that is part of the comprehensive plan. So, it talks about the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. So what are these homes selling for, the cottage homes and the paired villas? Like, if you can just give me sort of a ballpark idea of how
Yes.
much they're selling.
Sure. I show the cottage homes are going from 350 to 400, and we've seen some go as high as 500 on the cottage homes. They start to customize them, add a basement, add a finished basement, add a finished garage. But typically, well, I'll just say 3.25 to 400 on the cottage homes. The paired villas are going 250 to 350 per side. 250 to 350 per side. So, and I had brought this up at the last meeting, so that building, that duplex building at 250 to 350 per side is 500 to 700,000 for that building, sitting on essentially a 90-foot lot, which would be, and if we're just looking at assessed value, that would be higher than what the single family would be, sitting on the same size lot. You'd be probably 300 to 400,000 for a single-family home on that size lot.
And are you guys encountering any issues in terms of selling these types of properties? I mean, I get who would be attracted to paired villas, like you said, empty nesters, people that may or may not have children or whatnot. But is there that market in St. John? I mean, you've had other developments where you've had these properties. Did you encounter any issues in terms of selling these types of properties in those other developments?
No, I think the 55 and older market is so incredibly deep. If we probably average, let's say 30 new visitors a week, and then a week. So, from the market's just incredibly deep. I mean, we're in a little bit of an unusual time, but even barring that, no. Demand is really, really large, really large.
Ron, I recently had a conversation with Rob that works for you, and he mentioned to me that you've sold 77 homes in the last 90 days.
That's
Now,
right.
I don't know what mix that is, duplex versus paired villa versus cottage home, but he just said 77 homes in the last 90 days.
Yeah, that's right. And by comparison, I think all of last year we sold 110, right? So in 90 days, we've sold 77. I would say the mix is, because now we do some single family in Greystone on the other side, and we do some single family in the Gates. When I say single family, traditional 2-story type of product, I would think the mix of, again, I just think if you want to talk about a cottage home or a pair, because I have about equal quantity, is about 50-50. So of those 77, there's probably, 25 or 30 pairs, 25.
I just thought that might help quantify the answer for Yolanda.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the way it is right now, and obviously these things don't last. With this kind of velocity, how much the virus, how much of all of that plays into it, why these things sell so quickly, it's anybody's guess.
And did you guys say at the beginning of the presentation that you do have a plan for potentially making this predominantly R1 as opposed to the R3s?
I
Or
did-
R2s, I'm
yeah.
sorry?
Yeah, I did do a plan with an R2, yes, with a single-family lot, and I will show that to you in a minute. There was one or two other thoughts that I had. The one that I was trying to remember earlier, and Ron has actually also built a similar product. He built duplexes in Weston Ridge. Was that 10 years ago?
15
Maybe 15 years ago. So he built the Weston Ridge duplex product that's right by the stoplight there on 109th. He also built in another one of our developments, which was Peninsula Point, which was all duplexes right in the center of single-family residential area, and there's probably been a few others and has built some in Highland. The other factor that I wanted to mention earlier, and Ron's sales team does a great job of tracking where the buyers are coming from, and so we need to know that also for our demographics and our studies as we look at our developments. And last year, the percentage of buyer coming out of Illinois, because everybody assumes all the buyers are coming out of Illinois. Last year, the percentage of Illinois buyers was 29%, and this year it's 39%. So it's definitely gone up, but that means that 61% of the buyers are local, and a good percentage of those are actual St. John residents. Moving up, moving down, whatever that is. The rest are coming from Highland, Cherville, other local communities. So I thought that was an interesting factor. Rick, do you think you have that?
I looked for it, Jack, and I didn't see it. I couldn't find it in any of my emails.
So we laid out a grid of R2 lots, single family, 80 by 140 single family lots, and there are 104 units. It's not very exciting.
Jack, can you do me a favor? So can you go through how many cottage homes you have and what is the average width and depth of the lot?
Sure. So the cottage homes are 60-foot wide lots by 140 deep. Everything on here is 140 deep. 60-foot wide lot with
How many? I'm sorry.
How many of them?
How many you're proposing in this conceptual?
50.
Okay, I understand it's conceptual. so-
Yep, 50 units, 60-foot wide, and on that 60-foot lot is a 40 to 42-foot wide building, so you're somewhere in the 9-foot side yard.
Okay,
And we actually, in previous phases, we had some lots that were 56 and 58, so we're sticking with a 60-foot lot. That's a comfortable width. The paired villas are on a 90-foot lot, and there are 47 lots shown on here, which equates to 94 units.
and besides the front yard setback, is there any other variance from that's my typical?
No, that is the only, so honestly, we don't need a PUD. We could go straight R3 zoning with a variance for the front yard setback, because it requires a 40-foot setback in the R3, which just is ridiculously far back off the street. So we go with a 25-foot front yard setback.
And then one more, the maintenance free, is there an HOA that?
Oh, yeah.
actually-
Yeah, so
And,
there's,
What's,
so we have, it's a fairly complicated process, but we run the master HOA for all of Greystone, which is the entrances, the signs, the irrigation, the lighting, the landscape maintenance, the berms along Calumet. And we charge all the cottage home and duplex users $180 a year for that, for the master HOA. So $180 a year, $15 a month, gets the entrances maintained. Now, you have individual HOAs underneath the master HOA. He has the HOA that runs the lawn mowing and snow removal for the units.
Right, so,
just ballpark?
yeah, I think it's $125 a month, which includes the water for the irrigation, the maintenance to the irrigation system, so they blow it out, they start it up, fertilization 2 or 3 times a year, trimming once or twice a year, all the lawn cutting, of course, and the snow removal.
I mean, besides the value of the home, you gotta pay a mortgage, you also have potentially a $150 a month HOA, so you're paying another $1,800 a year.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the upside to that over the single-family development is it's all well-maintained. Everything's mowed, everything's green, everything's weed-free.
So the square footage of the units, the material used on the units are all meet our subdivision
Yeah,
control ordinance.
above. The minimum in an R3 zone is 1,400. We don't have anything that small. Again, we've I've talked about this before, whether it's preserve or graystone, we set an architectural standard in all of our developments, and we're constantly pushing it up, trying to improve the architecture, the variety, the increase in colors we've been talking about. That came up at one of the other meetings. We've gone from a 7-color option to 27 color options now on the units, so higher landscaping, all of that stuff.
And, I mean, I'll say my last piece, I know we talked about this, I think, 2 study sessions ago. I know you have an access to an undeveloped site to your west. I would always like to see more connectivity.
Yeah.
Either if it goes north, one go south, and one go west.
Yep.
We have an issue in the town of traffic. I believe some of that issue is because we're forcing everybody out to a single location. So,
Agreed.
I mean, I know that's not part of zoning, but
No.
you asked, I hate to get involved in development.
No,
But
no,
one
I
of my
appreciate that.
bailiwicks of my soapbox is connectivity throughout the community, trying to disperse traffic more efficiently than forcing everybody out to the major
I totally
thoroughfares.
wholeheartedly agree, and we would do it every time. And I would stub a road to the south if the school wasn't there, if there was any possibility
Oh,
that
that's right.
if that was ever going to go, I'd
Yeah, that's brand
gladly
new though.
stub a
Yeah,
road
that's right,
there.
that's right.
So,
I forgot. Thanks for reminding me.
Yep.
You just need to, just remind me. All right. Any other
This is
questions?
Bob. I want.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
I wanted to jump in. You know, St. John mainly for the last, since its start, been single-family home, except for the last 10 years, maybe, then we've seen an influx of cottage homes and duplexes being built. I'm afraid, if we allow this to go, this development, property to the west, property to the east, farther down, on across 109th, we allow it here, it could continue. I understand all the baby boomers and people wanting maintenance free. Do I get it? Spending that kind of money for those type of units? No, I'll never get it. But I'm not buying them. Other people are buying them. Will they hold their value? I don't think so. 30 years down the road, I don't think they will, but that's my opinion. And I just think we could go with single family. That's kind of what St. John's been based on, is single family, fairly large lots. We're getting smaller, narrower lots, and that's kind of where the direction it has been for the last, X amount of years. Not all the time, but there is. So that's where I stand with this development.
This is Yolanda. I agree with Bob. That's exactly what I was going to say. He put it way better than I would have. But yeah, I completely agree. I think lower density single family residential homes is what St. John is primarily and predominantly known for. And I'd like to keep it that way. I'm not a fan of paired villas. I'm not a fan of cottage homes, although I do understand that there may be a draw to it. There's a certain attractiveness to it. But I think that maybe a better mix of it would be more desirable. This entire presentation here is entirely paired villas and cottage homes. Maybe a mix would be a little bit better, or considering the R2s. I mean, I'd like to see what the R2 development would look like. That would be more preferable. But again, that's my preference, and I agree with Bob.
There's a subdivision in Crown Point. I don't want to say the name, but you drive in. There's the cottage homes, and then the farther you go down the road from the main, from the entrance, then it gets into the single family. Maybe we could start doing some of that instead of just all strictly cottage homes or the paired duplexes. Maybe we can have a mixture, have a little bit of a draw and have both, where there's some cottage homes and some single family. Am I a fan of the 80-foot lots? No. You know, the Preserve West, you know, I wanted to see larger lots. I think that's why St. John, people are attracted to St. John, because it still feels a little bit of country to them, having a wider lot. Do they buy narrow lots? Yes, they do, because sometimes they don't have a choice. But I think if they did have a choice, they'd buy them.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you just said, and Greystone did start out as a combination of cottage homes, duplexes, and single-family, and the single-family has really struggled there. We're starting to get some traction on it now, but we've got a ways to go on the single-family product there. Again, when we look at the site, you know, the highest and best use, it's a flat cornfield. There's nothing that makes it as a super desirable single-family lot if you've also got preserve and other options nearby. So, you know, you said kind of a similar thing to what Mr. Kennedy said about setting a precedent for approving this type of development. I don't think there's ever an obligation to approve one and then approve another, and that's not to say that we won't come back and ask for it again, because we have other sites in town, and I'm sure we'll be looking at this type of product again, because we know it sells and we know there's demand for it. So, but at this point, this site stands alone, and it's part of the Greystone development. So we'd like to continue on with what we've started there.
Nancy, John, Mike, any other comments or questions?
Nothing here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the feedback, and we'll digest all that, and we'll be back in 3 weeks at the next meeting, and we'll continue the discussion and see what we can come up with.
Rick, if you could send that drawing to us that they revised,
I'll make sure
you know,
you
maybe
have it.
that'd be something we could chew on.
Yeah, will do, Bob.
Okay, thanks.
All right, if the board has no other comments, we'll move on to item number D, the Preserves East. This is seeking a public hearing in November for a two-lot subdivision, Elvina Rose Court in Rosewood. All infrastructure is already in place.
So hopefully Rick will bring this up. This was the one that 2 weeks ago did receive a favorable recommendation on the
Casboni?
Casboni property.
Those two lots that.
Yeah, so we've got the two lots on the south end, and we're trying not to get the cart ahead of the horse here, because I know it still has to go to the town council for approval for the rezoning to R1. But assuming we get the R1, we want to move forward with those two lots, and Rick's brought them up on the screen there. We would just plat those two by themselves. It would be the working name, rather, it was called the Preserve East. Now it's the Preserve at Rosewood Estates would be Lot 1 and Lot 2. 1.55 acre lot on the west, a 1.88 acre lot on the east. Both of them about 400 feet of frontage on Elvina Rose Court. Obviously, the sewer and water is all there already. So these will be some really nice lots. We're going to match or exceed the covenants of the existing Rosewood subdivision, which is an all masonry requirement. Yeah. So we still have to get the R1 zoning at the next town council meeting, and then at the next plan commission meeting, we would be requesting permission to advertise for the November meeting for a primary plat on this.
Primary and second? Would we
Yeah,
do?
you probably do primary and
That would be great if we
secondary,
could get them both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Nope.
All right. We will move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item E, release of letter of credit for Family Express.
The last sheet in your packets is a letter that Ken did for us in November of 2019 regarding the bond release for Family Express, and we simply haven't taken the action to do that. So it requires an action by the Plan Commission to recommend to the council that the bond be released, and then the council would approve that release at their succeeding meeting, and then we'd release the bond to Family Express.
I don't know if I'm going to approve it. They got the president wrong.
So what? Oh,
It's from last year.
that's from last year.
From
yeah.
last year. We got to change that, Ken. I don't know if you need to change it.
No, you don't.
No, you still has form as
Change
president.
the date too?
Yeah, change the date. Yeah, it might be the same now. All right, very good. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the letter. Okay. All right. Finally, item E, zoning ordinance revisions will be discussed.
Yes, so I sent you basically my comments on chapters 1 through 11 of the zoning ordinance. I think we have about 21 chapters altogether, and there's more meat to chew on with some of those in the later chapters. But these are issues that I think we need to address in the first 11 chapters. I know you've only had them for a couple of days, so how much, whether you want to want more time to digest them or discuss them at this meeting, I'm game for either one.
So I went through it, Rick. I read them. There were some comments I had. I don't know if it would be better if, instead of going through all my comments today, I just send you an email. So I don't know if the board had a chance to review these, but let's at least try to accomplish this, board. If we haven't reviewed it in the next 2 weeks, review them. Let's try to get Rick some comments for the October board, or at least bring it back. I mean, is there a time frame, Rick, that you're
Well,
trying to?
Yeah, I plan to have to send you another, I don't know that I'm gonna do 12 through 21, because there's some meaty subjects coming up. But I plan to have some more information for you, probably, let's say 12 through 15 or 16, chapters 12 through 15 or 16, in a much more timely manner, so that at our October study session, we're really ready to make some significant comments, changes perhaps, recommendations. But I think there's too much to digest to try to do it all at the October study session.
Because, I mean, Paul and I went through that overlay district with a lot of the development up and down 41, where it's supposed to be along 41, and then you got comments of how far the building setback has to be, so I know there's some conflicts in our zoning ordinance and things like that, so that's gonna take time and to get everybody accustomed to what requested changes we need. And
One of the
so-
things I really want to change is, we have language in our ordinance that actually says we're supposed to measure setbacks to the overhang of a
Versus
building,
the-
versus the foundation, which I think is just ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. It should be foundations. And I did attach the sample of of an ordinance that was created a couple years ago to make that change, and we've never gotten around to doing that. So the last sheet attached to the zoning ordinance review has to do with the first item under the first page, chapter 5, residential districts, and that's considering changing those setbacks to make it to the foundation. As John can tell you, the roof lines can change, you know.
Yeah, even the addition of a gutter on a soffit can change your setback,
Yeah.
4 to 6 inches, so.
Yeah.
The foundation's the more concrete way, no pun intended, to
Yeah,
measure the setback.
yeah.
Yeah, because some of these are, pretty standard, like removing verbiage or adding a word or a period and stuff like that, so.
And there's several of the sections try to take precedence over each other, or well, for example, I mean, there's a comment in the commercial zoning districts that when there's a conflict, the stricter standard shall apply. but there's comment in the overlay district that says when there's a conflict, the standards in this district, in this section of the ordinance apply. So which is it? And we have some things like that that I'd like to get cleared up. I also, Adam, I would call your attention on page 1. We have a lot widths. We have a statement in the current zoning ordinance that says the BZA can grant variances to lot widths, but in no case can go less than 80 feet. I don't know that, that doesn't strike me as as legal, that we could tie the hands of the BZA's consideration of a lot width variance like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so, generally speaking, only the Plan Commission may grant waivers from the subdivision control ordinance. Now, this is not the subdivision control ordinance,
Right.
this is the zoning ordinance. And so conversely, the Board of Zoning Appeals is really the only body that can approve or deny variances from development standards, which are included in the zoning ordinance.
Right.
So I would liken this to a development standard, and that would be subject to a variance which can only be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right. But to say the BZA can't grant a variance of less, to a lot width of less than 80 feet, I don't think passes legal muster, but I'm not the attorney, so I just think that's, I don't know why that wording is in there, but that bothers me.
Anything, my personal opinion is anything that reduces I shouldn't say our ability, but make it concrete standards. So there is no sort of discretionary decision-making by this board. That's, I think, having a concrete standard where it says minimum is 80 feet. Don't ask for 78. Or,
Not at the Plan Commission level.
yeah, but at,
Unless it's a PUD. A PUD is a different animal, but I don't think the BZA should be, I don't think the powers of the BZA should be restricted by this, but the way this language restricts it. So,
At the end of the day, that anyone could approach the BZA and ask for a variance of any language within this zoning ordinance document, because that BZA oversees this document.
Right.
So having that language in there of putting a limiter on the BZA, it's sort of counterintuitive.
yeah,
By
exactly.
the way the process works.
Exactly,
So, 'cause
Paul.
as it stands now, that you could take the zoning ordinance and ask for almost any variance from it, you're allowed to ask for it, I guess. It's what we've always been taught.
Right, right.
And there's not specific guidelines. You could ask for ridiculous things if that's what you want to spend your money and time doing, and
Right.
even if they're not possible.
Right.
I love when you brought up garages in here. The size of garage, where they could put them.
Yeah, and Paul and I have had that discussion on garages that we need to talk about that as well. But Adam, there's a number of places in the zoning ordinance where it's mentioned that the Plan Commission can grant a waiver to items in the zoning ordinance, and that just isn't, at least from my training, that is not what can be done. The Plan Commission doesn't grant waivers to the zoning ordinance.
No, I agree. Like I said before,
Yeah.
if it's in the zoning ordinance, that, any variance of a development standard or, anything doing with the zoning ordinance is vested with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right,
Now, planned unit development is a little bit different because
Yes.
that's where you have a development plan and the change of zone all wrapped up into what's being presented, which comes to the Plan Commission and then ultimately goes to the legislative body, the town council. It's not really, the Board of Zoning Appeals is not involved in that review of a development plan associated with the planned unit development. So, but yes, I would agree with what you said, Rick.
okay. So I don't know how you want to approach this tonight. How much discussion do you want to have on this? Do you want more time to review it and take what I give you in the next week or so and put that together and talk about it at the October study session, or however you want to proceed with this? I'm ready.
You sent this to us, I think, we had it at the 2 weeks ago. We talked about reviewing it. I mean, do you have a time frame? Sometimes I like to
No.
back into it.
No, I don't.
Because I don't
wanna
want to
do it
keep,
right.
I don't want to get to the point where we're spending, I mean, we need to spend time on this, but 5 hours going over this, I want to avoid that. So
Yeah.
do we spend some time now going over some of these, if the board is ready? If the board needs more time to review, I'll push it back to the next board meeting, but at least let's start getting comments back to Rick over the next 2 weeks so we can have a productive study session in October.
That's kind of the way I'd prefer it, but
Okay.
I'm ready to
And-
do it either way.
And board, let me ask this, can we share all the comments? That's not breaking any protocols. Can we share, like my comments, can I share it with the rest of the board via email?
Absolutely. I would be okay with it.
No, I just want to make sure legally we could share
Oh,
comments through the whole
We're all on
board.
Rick's email, so I think it's,
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not doing any business. I'm just making suggested comments from what Rick has given me.
Yeah, no,
So the whole board could see it, so we're not potentially duplicating,
Right.
or everyone understands the comments that are being
I
made.
don't think there's anything legally that would prohibit you from circulating or sharing your comments with the other board members or with Mr. Eberly.
Okay, very good. So board, let's do that. We'll plan on the study session in October to go over not only these 4 pages, but other additional pages that Rick sends us. Please share any comments, concerns, questions regarding these comments to the whole board. And you do it free-flowing, I would say, and then, so then we could either have all those questions addressed or go through them in the October meeting. Everyone good with that?
sounds
think
good.
I think it's a great idea.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of bullet points here. And I think, at least from my quick overview of this document, I went through it on my computer. A lot of these are more technical revisions, not substantive, as far as changing what we're doing in town. Some are, but
Yeah.
a great deal are technical. So what I would possibly recommend to the board members is make notes of particular bullet points you want clarification or review or revision of, and we could skip the other ones. So
Yeah, some are,
kind of work through this. Let's work on the ones that there's a question about, and if there's no question about it, we could probably pass through that. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, I have been wanting to revise this document for years now, and have over the years had dialogue with Mr. Eberly and even with Adam recently. So I wanted to make the Plan Commission aware of a few what I would call substantial changes I'm looking for in the zoning document. So, but before I do that, actually, I just remembered to go back to the setback question. The foundation versus the eave. I thought of a loophole that concerns me, and I'm not sure how we can address it. What if you measure it from the foundation and then they build a 15-foot porch like a front porch overhang that,
Like a cantilever. Mhm.
like a big, I mean, my neighbor has one on the back of his house. I got no problem with it. It looks cool. But what if now you build a big front porch? We need to somehow account for that. I don't know if you have to count, you'd go by the pad or where the,
yeah, so we usually, when people do covered porches on the back and stuff like that, with the construction of it, there's always got to be a footing. You can't really cantilever wood any more than 2 feet.
right.
And when you go out, you got to be 4 times back in to where you were. So, we would measure from that footing of, and same thing for decks too. When there's a deck on the back of the house, we go to the footing of the post that holds up the deck,
Okay.
not the actual foundation wall of the habitable basement.
That's good, then it's all captured. I just want to make sure there wasn't some kind of
Well,
loophole. And
you might want to have language not to exceed the cantilever or the roof, not to exceed 3 feet or 4 feet, or,
Yeah.
because you could put a steel beam and extend it out, or a truss and extend it out for 50 feet, but, you might want some kind of language like that in there.
some kind of a maximum over, like.
Yeah, we could put
unsupported-
a cantilever clause or something in there to
Yeah.
kind of keep that down too.
So some of the
Yep.
other, oh, sorry. So some of the other things I asked Adam to start investigating, and Rick, and I've actually investigated myself, is some revisions to our lighting ordinance. I know I sent correspondence this week. There's I think a little hole in our lighting ordinance. We need to adapt to this new accent lighting people are putting on windows. Knock on wood, we haven't seen it in St. John yet, but the bright lights, the LEDs that are proliferating throughout like towns. If you're
Commercial or residential, Paul?
Commercial.
Commercial.
My wife calls them vape store lights because they seem to be at smoke shops all the time, and they're bright, and sometimes they're flashing and strobing, and it's, we have our ordinance captures like, I think, neon lights, but that's like the new neon.
Yes.
So I think accent lighting is something we need to capture. There's some ordinance I've found that exists now. People are countermeasuring that.
So is that not considered a sign?
No, it's just, they call it accent lighting. It's the best legal description I could find.
Yeah, it
And there
usually
are-
trims a window.
Oh, so it's not, okay, I see what you're
Trim the whole
saying.
building.
Yeah,
There's a
you can trim the whole
in
building.
Highland,
but
that
It's
the
usually a
whole-
window.
There's a car dealership near Highway and Kennedy that the entire building is accent lit with LED. And
I know, I know where you're at, yeah.
yeah, and they're getting brighter, and they're. So anyway, that's just an example of one thing I want to address. There's the overlay district. There's loopholes with 41 was supposed to be all brick building, but the 41 overlay allows other materials, and there's loopholes for that. It just happened with Culver's recently. So Culver's has siding on it, and the intent of the ordinance was not to have siding, but now that siding is made out of masonry, there's a loophole there. So I suggest we might go back to all brick and let it go to the BZA if you want anything else. So there's some pretty substantial things I'm trying to firm up, I guess, in our ordinance and close some of those loopholes. And landscaping, I know I asked Rick to reach out to Tom Post, the DNR guy, get his review of our landscape, make sure we don't have any improper species, that kind of thing. I know we have a lot of problems with these pear trees that are invasive and cracking down in every parkway in town. So we want to make sure that's updated and revised by a professional.
Yeah, Paul, that was on page 2, what is that, chapter 8, special districts, tree planting and public row, I put, as long as we specify species. I would be in favor of tree, but as long as the species has been specified as a type of tree we would want.
Well,
If that's-
we have a list of approved tree species, but we don't have a list of, what's the word I'm looking for? Prohibited trees, which is, yeah, so you
Wait,
should.
so how, if you have a specific type of tree you could only put in, how,
But you should have a list of prohibited trees that you
Oh.
don't want to see in not just a list of approved trees, because I guess that might imply that anything else is prohibited, but it doesn't state it
Right.
definitively enough.
I don't believe the zoning ordinance limits the trees to those that have been approved. And so you can either do that, or you can identify prohibited trees, and so
So if we have a list of trees we don't want to see, we need to create that list and call that a list of prohibited trees that you can't have.
we can't just add verbiage that after you list what you want, everything else is prohibited?
I suppose you could do that, yeah.
I think
I'm just,
based on our experience, Tom Post seemed very eager to work with us when we had when we reviewed the Lucky Brothers concept. He was happy to work with us and go through their landscape plan and prune it, no pun intended. And I just thought we could tap him as a resource. He could probably give a quick read through and maybe send a quick document of, well, here's what we wouldn't want next to our property. These are considered invasive species in Indiana, that type of thing. So we might as well mirror what the desired prohibited list is in the state, and that's an ever-changing document, I guess. So I think it would be a good idea, again, specifically, whatever the DNR considers invasive, why would we want to allow or encourage planting those type of species? It just seems like we should mirror what the state recommends, and I thought he could be a resource that we can tap for that, for some simple guidelines.
Now, if we're gonna prohibit trees, who would police the planting of trees, being as,
Well, they have to have them on a plan.
but I mean for like residential and stuff
No,
where,
yeah, residential isn't required to have, either to provide landscaping or have landscaping. plans, so it'll be commercial applications. I mean.
But I
so
mean, if
they
we make
do,
a
yeah.
prohibited tree and we say, a pear tree is prohibited in St. John, what prevents, John from going and getting one and digging a hole in his parkway and plunking it in?
Right,
then-
nothing.
Yeah,
And,
nothing.
but we want to at least start with a document, so at least commercial has to have a plan. I mean, you would hope that at residential, if somebody hires a professional and they were to call Rick for a permit or any information, he'd be able to provide something. So we want to have that to be provided, especially for professional companies, to be aware of whatever they're designing to put it in.
Right.
Probably won't stop,
John.
just going to Home Depot and buying one,
Yeah.
but it's a start. It's just guidance and pointing us in the right direction.
Because you just would hate to put a tree in a parkway. I wondered, you're saying that, then all of a sudden the sidewalk starts to buckle because the tree roots
Yeah,
are.
it has roots that are
Roots are-
up higher or bigger.
And just to add to that, currently, your zoning ordinance for planned unit development requires submission of a landscape plan associated with the residential PUD. So it could,
And I know
This-
like a lot of developments, like Schilling will tell you, you gotta plant 5 trees, 7 trees on a corner lot, whatever, and they'll police what goes in and, I think some of the subdivisions you even have to submit a concept plan of your landscaping before you put the rock around your porch and stuff like that, but other less restrictive covenant subdivisions, they give you the clay basic grading and they tell you you could seed, sod, blanket, whatever you wanna do to grow grass.
but if I can add, just, I'm looking at, this is chapter 9, which are B2, which are all the components that are required to be submitted with the planned unit development at this stage. And it includes a landscape plan with existing landscaping and topography and the proposed landscaping showing location, kind, and caliper measurement, size of trees, shrubbery, and screening materials as required by chapter 13. So, I mean, it can be applied beyond just commercial applications.
But then when you get to chapter 13, it specifically says that it may say single-family residential, but residential is not required to provide landscaping. Yeah, so there's a conflict there, Adam. If you go to chapter 13, right under applicability, I believe, the first paragraph, it says,
You're right, Rick. It says, Section B, the minimum landscape standards contained herein shall apply to all developments except detached, single-family, and agricultural uses in the town and previously approved
Right.
developments.
right, so like the Preserve West, for example. Jack can talk all day long about a landscape plan he's gonna do there. I'm not even gonna look at it because we don't prohibit anything and we don't require anything. So there's nothing for me to look at there. So,
But it's part of the PUD.
but it's single-family detached.
Right.
So it doesn't,
Rick's comment's taken. So if it was a PUD for commercial or industrial, then it applies. And so maybe that needs to be examined.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a consideration of the Plan Commission about to the extent of that landscape oversight in residential PUD.
And Paul, I think I
So-
may have to try to find somebody else in DNR. The last 2 times I've reached out to Tom, he's not responded. I'm wondering if maybe he retired.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was always very helpful. in
Yes,
the
he
process.
was. He was always quick to respond, too, and the last 2 times I've reached out, I haven't gotten a response from him.
Yolanda or Nancy, did someone want to make a comment?
I had a question.
Yep.
So, like the preserves, like the one that we looked at today, can we ask or do they submit to us what they're going to give to their people that buy the lots? Like, you have to plant 3 trees, you have to place sod, do they give that information to anyone?
They,
Or do we not care, or there's nothing we can do about it?
well, a couple of things there, Nancy. We don't police their covenants, so they don't typically give them to us. We could require them, but covenants can be changed in any number of ways, and us getting the initial set of covenants doesn't mean we'll always have the most up-to-date, and I don't want to be providing someone with a set of covenants that isn't accurate. So honestly, from my perspective, I'd like to see them referenced on the secondary plat, to have the plat say, they can be found at, and there's usually a recording document number for covenants that is placed on a plat, and then someone can go to the county recorder's office and get a copy of those covenants. But for us to get them and keep them, we don't enforce them, number one, and number two, they may not always be the most accurate set of covenants. So honestly, I don't even want them for that reason, for those reasons.
And they change all
All
the
right,
time probably with amendments.
I just think it's nice, it makes the town look nicer when you have homes being built and they're planting trees. I mean, it just, to me, makes everything look a lot more attractive. But
I think Adam had
Rick,
a comment about that.
Rick, this is Bob. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Does St. John require parkway trees to be planted in the parkway by the developer?
No, and that's what John was referring to earlier. We have, in the overlay district, we have a comment about trees being parked or planted in the right-of-way, and we don't want them, as nice as a tree-lined street looks, we don't want them planted in the parkway because of how they disrupt sidewalks and utilities, as you know, Bob.
And mirrors on snowplow trucks.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I would agree with you.
Way up on the curb.
Yeah, if they're gonna have them, we want them on private property. Now, sometimes we have utilities on, on private property, so we could still have a conflict there, but when they're in rights of way, they cause more problems than they don't
work.
solve problems, but they don't, well, I guess they do, from a stormwater standpoint, they do, but no, we'd rather not have them in rights of way, Bob.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Are we talking about even residential?
yeah, yeah.
So I guess I would like to still see trees in right of way, but I would like to see us somehow specify, again, prohibited versus not. Like, the trees in my parkway are the wrong kind, and they did buckle the sidewalks. But I've also seen trees that stay small.
Yeah, if you can get one that doesn't balloon out like a pear tree, where it goes over the curb.
But they should be in the front yards, in my opinion, behind the sidewalk, not between the sidewalk and the curb.
It's a good look, though, on the parkway if it's limited to a tree that doesn't overtake it, I guess. I see them up and down my block. People have trees that have been there 20 years and they're fine.
I think they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
Paul, yes. In fact, one of the prettiest streets in Dyer is called Carnation Street, and it's a beautiful tree-lined street. And every year Dyer pays for, not pays for, because the trees that are in the rights of way are on public property. But every year Dyer replaces damage to the snow plows from hitting those trees. So you're right, it has to be the right kind of tree.
Right kind,
more
definitely.
conical.
Definitely
than-
the right kind, because there are some species
Those
that
trees are 4 feet
absolutely
off the curb.
can stay within their
No, when they
boundaries and
balloon
not
out.
have those issues. They're specific, it's not like
Well,
you can't just put any tree there, right?
The branches.
You don't want
Yeah,
deep
it comes
rooting,
out
and
and
you
then
don't
you're
want,
sitting
as
up
John
8 feet
said,
up.
trees that are going to, spread out and be
Sidewalk.
within the, overhanging the actual curbs, so, yeah, there's issues with
We'll
those.
pull up ivy.
So I
with
wonder
right-of-way
what,
treatment.
Ivy
might
off
be
Joliet.
worthwhile to reach out to
like a
Cheryl
one-lane road
on
now
this
because-
issue. I know they hired someone,
They're so
or they
ballooned
have
out.
someone on staff now who's a specialist in plants.
Like an arborist?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
Huh?
So I wonder, I'm actually going to be having a conversation with Bob Oaken probably next week. I might bounce that off and see if they have any ideas for
Sure.
that. Or if they have something in there, or, because I don't want to say you can't put them in the parkway anymore because all the neighbors will look barren, but it'd be nice to be able to have the best of both worlds and again, come up with a guidance list that if professionals are looking for plans or in commercial, we'd say, this is what you have to do. These are prohibited species. This is what you can put in a parkway. This is what you can't put in a parkway. I mean, if we could narrow the list and at least give guidance, it'd be helpful,
Yeah.
I like
But
them.
also-
I like them in the parkway, but I understand the issues. I never thought of
I
a snow
think-
truck hitting a. I know I get
Yeah.
upset when I'm walking
It's
and
gotta be
someone
the
didn't.
small ones. There are the small ones, like, and you see them, like, if you go into the urban areas, they plant these type of trees in these, like, basically
Yeah.
sidewalk planters, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
never get big.
Like
They're
that's the
made
center
for
line
that.
of the road.
So that would be interesting. We're also hopefully gonna get enough applicants to put the tree board in
I don't even
motion,
think of that.
and that could be a subject of theirs as well, so they can help out the plan commission with this. the tree board. We're waiting for more applicants, so we're trying. So, thank you for allowing that time just to explain some of the bigger things we're gonna be bringing through. I do have one last, question, comment. Rick, I might have mentioned this to you. The town center overlay, I think it needs to be revised. I think it does not mirror, at least what my vision of the center of our town should look like. And I know it could be a comprehensive plan subject, but it's also present in the zoning ordinance.
It is.
So if we wanted to revise those boundaries, would we be able to do that at this stage, or would we have to wait till we revise the comprehensive plan?
Well, those boundaries, Paul, are set in the comprehensive plan. They're restated in the zoning ordinance, but they're wrong in the zoning ordinance. So that was one of the things that I mentioned correcting, was changing the boundaries in the zoning ordinance to match what's in the comprehensive plan. But I think if you want to change the boundaries, period, then I think we should change them in both documents, I would imagine, Adam, because we identify it in the, as Paul said, in the comp plan. Although the comp plan's just a guide, it's probably more important that they be set in the zoning ordinance than the comp plan. But it'd be nice to have them to say the same, and right now they don't.
And just for the understanding of the Plan Commission, right now our town center is, I think it's kind of oddly shaped.
It is.
And really, anyone who knows St. John, has been here a while, you could view our town center, or the oldest part of town, is centered around 93rd and 41, extending north to the bridge like Wall Street. There's some old development, there's some empty development, and then extending south to Shops 96, really to 97. So you have the area between 97th and Wall Street, between Kyleman and the railroad tracks. You have your municipal complex, your library, the historic church. That's going to be the area we're going to try to do more urban type development in, and it seems like that whole rectangle should be captured as town center and developed in such a manner. We're looking to put different road bypasses through there and improvements. So that was my idea of what it should be in reality. When we want to look at future development, like of the old truck stop site or St. John Mall or where Golo is, if that corner redevelops, do we want that to look typical suburbia, or do we want to go for a town, a downtown
type,
or
yeah.
small town concept, where you have more zero setback lines, bring the buildings up closer to the highway, versus what you do down by Target. The buildings are all set back and you have the big buffers. It's the typical suburban development from 97th, pretty much south in town. It's what's the trend has been out there. But in this center of town, we want to try to preserve what we have and maybe build it and improve it over time. I know John, he's seen a lot of that type of redevelopment done, and I could see some redevelopment in our future in that rectangle. So we want to make sure that we guide it in the proper way, and don't want to put something in that's kind of a fish out of water. The Kmart site's a great example of that. Does a big box belong in the middle of our town anymore? That used to be on a cornfield. Now it's the middle of town. Maybe a big box doesn't belong there at all. It's kind of a fish out of water, next to the small shops and things that are there. So those boundaries are something I'd like to see revised if there's support for it.
I mean, it makes sense to move it up to Wall Street at least, take it farther north to the base of the bridge. 'Cause right here it says 93rd.
Yeah. Are you looking at a map now, or?
No, it's page 2. So Rick lists the boundaries. It should, how it should
Island
read.
and the tracks are sort of the other natural boundaries. I don't know if it's listed here.
They got it to Thielen Street, Joliet Street, Hack Street, so.
No, you're talking about a much greater area, Paul, than even than is shown in the comp plan for the town center. So I think that's something the council needs to give direction to the plan commission on, is what you want to see as the town center described area.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the zoning ordinance would have overlay for that to guide it in a certain direction, so.
And it does, yeah.
We'll have more conversation. You and I can talk offline about this too, but it's
Yep.
something I think is important as that area may start redeveloping. And again, the Kmart site's one example, the truck stop site, the site across from the truck stop, that vacant land, that Schilling now owns all that.
Yes.
So how do we want that to develop, you know?
Yeah.
So it's important that we capitalize on the opportunity of good planning instead of letting it just run rampant, so.
Yep. Yep.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board? All right. We will see, maybe, we'll see everybody in October. We'll wait till what the governor announces in a week or so, if
Yeah.
we're still doing Zoom. All right, everyone have a great evening.
All right, good night.
Good night.